So, thank you for allowing me to speak today. I'd like to share with everybody two things. Actually, now you'll see with the baby it's three. But I want to share with you a little known aspect of American Jewish history and then conclude with a very unusual phone call I had this past week. In the early 1800s, in the late 1800s and early 1900s, one of the issues facing the Jewish community was anti-Semitism. Oh, it's gone now. We don't have to worry about it. All right. In congressional hearing in 1912, so here's in 1912, there's congressional hearing, and there was the Jewish community was trying to get rabbis to enter into the military. You had to pass a law to allow a certain number of spots for that. So here we have somebody testifying on behalf of the Jewish community. In 1912, we want to show that the Jew fights because it has been said even in churches that the Jew does not fight. And we know that the Jew is a patriotic citizen, and we want to prove it. And we want to prove that we have our fair proportion of Jewish boys in the Army and Navy. It is also a question of principle, which is just in harmony with the freedom from discrimination guaranteed by the American Constitution. So early on, our people were saying that we are part and parcel in the fabric of this country, and we want to serve. Now we know, and I just want to mention that to all our visitors, unfortunately, things were not that great. That was in 1912. What happened in the summer of 1915, a few miles from here? Poor Leo Frank was lynched. Some visitors to the congregation just go outside. Near the parking lot, you'll see a tree and a nice plaque in his memory. Now think about this a second. In 1912, the early 1900s, many of our great-greats were just getting here. I know my family was, and starting their own families. Now, military service was something that would have been an anathema to most Jews from Russia, Poland. Why? Because in the Tsarist army, what they did was come to your village, take a boy, take a child, and just whisk them away. And they would be away most of their life. And they'd be hundreds of miles away, and it'd be quite unlikely that person would ever come back, or certainly that they would maintain their Judaism. By the way, there were quotas for these young boys. Communities had to fill these quotas. If those numbers were unmet, communal agents known as coppers went among the villages hunting for young children to kidnap and send to the Tsar's army. Organized pogroms, such as the one at Kishinev in 1903, further humiliated the Jewish community and hastened their departure to America and a few to Israel. Now, think about that. So our great-greats escaped the Tsar, the Tsarist army, the Cossacks and pogroms, and they come here. Despite all that, first-generation Jews are going to volunteer for military service. So underline that. What was America called? The Golden Medina, the Golden Land. And so our great-greats realized that despite all that difficulty with the military, we were going to support this new country that we love. So they signed up. Note this, interestingly, most people don't know this, we were overrepresented in the military World War I. So based on our percentage of the population, there were more people in than that percentage. April 1917, we enter World War I. It had begun in Europe. We stayed out of it. Woodrow Wilson was president, etc. Immediately, the Jewish community came together in New York and formed the Jewish Welfare Board, JWB, which sounds like JWV, but different. Parallel, but different. Now, I want you to hear this. Within a year, there are 100 organizations, 100 Jewish organizations. You name it, from the most Orthodox to the most Reformed to the most fraternal. They got together and they all formed this organization of the Jewish Welfare Board. And here are some of the things they did. They provided religious services, hospital visits, they distributed writing paper, passed out treats, set up dances, lectures, and more. And let me read to you what they did. In coordination with the Jewish Publication Society of America, they distributed over 200,000 prayer books, 12 million pieces of JWB stationery and envelopes, thousands of talitot, tefillin, mezuzot, etc. Almost 200,000 Hebrew Bibles. Additionally, Yiddish and Russian translations of government pamphlets about insurance, health, and hygiene were disseminated, along with Jewish songbooks containing Hebrew, English, and Yiddish songs. So you name it, and the Jewish community was going to be there and supporting our people. Additionally, as if that wasn't enough, all those supplies and the entire Jewish community coming together to take care of our people in uniform. In addition to a few dozen rabbis on active duty, the Jewish Welfare Board engaged a cadre of people called Star of David people. Anyone ever hear this? It's really a little piece of history which is wonderfully but sadly unknown. The JWB hired people to be lay leaders, to function as, there weren't enough rabbis to function as rabbis. In the absence of a military rabbi, they functioned as spiritual leaders and counselors for troops. They received 2 months of training for these positions. By the end of the war, over 300 people had fulfilled those positions. So you had all your active duty chaplains, about 2 dozen, and 300 Star of David men and women to care for our people out there. The war created opportunities for faith groups to work together. One of the first rabbis in service was Elkan Vorsanger, who had initially entered the war as a medic, and then the law changed, which I told you about. Then he transferred into the chaplain corps. In March of 1918, he received an offer from the YMCA. So here's the YMCA. They reach out to the rabbi. The YMCA, said to the rabbi, you know, Passover is coming up, which I hope the rabbi knew. Passover is coming up, and we, the YMCA, want to sponsor you at the Y in Paris. This is World War II. They're fighting in Paris. We'll pay for all the transportation for your troops. We'll pay for all the meals. We'll pay for all the rooms. The Y is doing that. And, of course, Rabbi Vorsanger, I would take that offer. After the event, Vorsanger said, how this war is breaking down prejudice, hatred, and petty narrowness is indicated by such incidents as this: a Christian organization promoting a Jewish religious service and offering to foot the bill. Keep that in mind. You never know. You never know. Rabbi Vorsanger went on to win a Purple Heart and was recommended to receive the Army's Distinguished Service Medal for his bravery in battle. Now, what would he do, Vorsanger? He was a medic. And this is trench warfare in France. So when there was a battle going on and people were wounded, he would literally crawl out to where the people were on the ground, minister to them from the medic side, and they used to carry all sorts of medical supplies, and then crawl back. And for that, he earned the title of the Fighting Rabbi. So he was indeed. By the way, the assistance of the Jewish Welfare Board was like so great that every active duty rabbi received a new Ford car overseas so that they could drive around to wherever the troops were and have that. Now, number one, we should note how wonderful that was. The support of the American Jewish community to our people in World War I, what did I say, was exceptional. Every conceivable need that a Jewish soldier had was taken care of. Think for a second. We've all been reading about Russia, Ukraine, and all that. These poor Russian kids who are being grabbed out of their homes and schools and all that and told what? Go to Ukraine and we'll train you for 2-3 months. Their morale is what? On the ground, they're giving up. Now imagine, now you contrast that with one of our people who had an active duty rabbi or a Star of David worker who was literally with them and encouraged them. Here's writing material. We're setting up a dance. Here's kosher food. Here's services for you. Their morale was going to be quite high. By the way, interestingly, the troops asked the rabbis when they were in France to teach them American history, to teach them how democracy worked, and to teach them English so that they would speak without an accent. and people would know that they were fully Americanized. Sadly, this was the high point in the relationship between the overall Jewish community and the Jews in the armed forces. Since World War I and II, the level of support for Jews in the armed forces has been sadly dropping. I can attest to that in my 20 years in the Navy, we simply wouldn't get that much support from either local synagogues or larger communal organizations. Locally, and hooray for the Jewish War veterans, I know you all do some work at Fort Benning. Except for that, I would say that the level of support, if it was 100 during World War I, 2, we'll give it 2. But it's kind of sad. Now, I was thinking about that, and I couldn't end my words to you on that note. So I was thinking about our wonderful Eitz Chaim and how people give so much of their hearts and souls, from rebuilding the sanctuary and the social hall to collecting food items or hygiene kits, our backpack program. Eitz Chaim is a congregation of Jews fulfilling the mitzvah of caring for those in need. Given that background, I made a phone call. Now, this is where it gets a little weird, but I'll share it with you because I'm here. So I called my friend Irv Elson. Anyone know the name Irv Elson, a former Navy chaplain? He's now the head of the Jewish Welfare Board. So he's running it in New York. So I called him and I said, hi, I'm speaking here at Eitz Chaim on Veterans Day, and I want to give something to the congregation to do. I want to have some activity. Is there a Jewish need that you would see that I could bring back to the congregation? Eerily, at that moment, the line went silent. So I thought the call was dropped. So I called his name, Irv, are you there? And he said, yes, I am. He said to me, the timing of your call is breathtaking. I said, what? Now, I haven't spoken to him in a while. He said, an hour ago, the Navy Chief of Chaplain's office informed me that for the first time in history, they were assigning 2 active duty rabbis to 2 aircraft carriers within the next year. There'll be an active duty rabbi, Yoni Warren, who will be aboard the Truman, the Harry S. Truman, and there'll be a Rabbi Aaron Kleinman aboard the second. They're building a new ship of the Kennedy, John F. Kennedy. And he said both of those rabbis called me and asked me for some support with the chapel program. I said, whoa. I said, the name Kleinman, I know, you know Yoni, right? You're classmates. I know Yoni too over the phone. I said, Kleinman sounds a little familiar, so I called Aaron Kleinman, Rabbi Aaron Kleinman. He says, hi, Rabbi, do you remember me? I said, kind of, a little bit. He says, I was a midshipman with you in the Jewish chapel program 30 years ago, and I attended, with your bat mitzvah, Rachel, your bat mitzvah at the Naval Academy, and look in the pictures, I'm there. So he was an aviator for 10 years. He flew, he's Hawkeyes, and he got out, went to rabbinical school, came back as a rabbi. So, first time in history, we have 2 rabbis who are going to be on aircraft carriers in the next year. So I spoke with both of them. They would be quite pleased that a civilian congregation is interested in helping them. They both said they would be honored to have us as their Jewish sponsor, and this is in the next year or so. And they said we could help Jewish and non-Jewish personnel on the ship. Can you imagine that, by the way? Just can you imagine you bump into somebody at Publix and they say, hey, I'm from Eitz Chaim. Okay, good. And you say, by the way, we support the aircraft carrier Truman. Oh, and by the way, we actually support to the John F. Kennedy. Thank you very much. I think it would be absolutely a gigantic, wonderful mitzvah to do that. I really do. Now, I have to be honest with you. I ran it by Rabbi Drash, and I told both rabbis, by the way, we already have invitations to go to Norfolk and visit the ship when it's up there. The Kennedy, by the way, with my former midshipman, who's now a commander, newly selected, he said, we're building the Kennedy from the ground up, and you all can be involved in Jewish chapel and an ark and everything. Of course, I'm going a little crazy at that point. But I said to both rabbis, I said, I want to speak to the congregation first. I want your blessing to do this. It won't be expensive, but it'll be more of an emotional commitment. And I think in many ways, there's three ways, and this is my finish. In one way, we're saying thank you to 100 years ago, to all the great greats who just newly arrived from Russia, spent their time and money and said, we'll support you. And you put on that uniform of America, we'll support you. So in one way, we're supporting them. In the second way, we are moving that needle from what used to be 100 to 1 or 2. We're going to push that up. And I think that Eitz Chaim can be an example for the rest of the Jewish community. And we will have this written up in all sorts of media places that you need to step up. And we have people out there who would love to get some matzah for Passover. They'd love to get a Star of David. I saw Ken had one. Or kippah that says Harry Truman or Kennedy, whatever. That's what they want. Or an email from you. Simple, a connection. So for the people 100 years ago and for the people of today, I think we can do it. And if truth be told, it sounds weird, but Kleinman was a midshipman, now he's a commander. The little baby, Miss Salem is her name? Salem? Who knows? One day, she decides to enter the Navy. Not far-fetched. And she ends up on one of two ships. She ends up on the Truman or the Kennedy, and you say, you know what? We know all sorts of people. We have your back. You'll be fine. So everyone, I don't know. Is it a yay or a nay? Do we go for it or not? You tell me. Okay, so here's what I'm going to ask you to do. In military parlance, give me a big hoorah. A little louder, please. There you go. Shabbat Shalom. Happy Veterans Day.